Good morning, students. Good morning. You can see the heading isoquant and isocost lines with diagram on your screen. So this is our topic today. Okay. The topic today is isoquant and isocost lines in production theory. We are doing short run and long run production processes, and under this is another topic. Short run we have completed. Now today we are starting with the long run. The topic for under long run, first topic under long run is isoquant and isocost lines. So that we will discuss today. So if this question arises that what is isoquant and isocost line in production theory, we will write this answer that we will discuss today. Now, before moving on to the direct concept of isoquant and isocost line, we need to understand a very important thing in production theory. Okay, what you see the lines, this I'm referring to these lines. You see a firm's main objective is profit maximization, isn't it? Any firm which is operating in the market, its main objective or the most important objective is to maximize its profit. Now if in the short run its total output remains fixed due to capacity constant, and if it is a price taker, that is cannot fix the price or change price on its own as in a purely competitive market. Now if these two things are happening in the short run, first thing is the output cannot be increased due to capacity constraint. You have installed a capacity, the firm has invested money in installing the capacity, and for a period of say 1 year or 2 years it cannot increase its capacity because already lots of investment has been incurred, and at the moment the firm doesn't have that financial ability to increase its capacity, so there is a constraint on its total output generation. Thus, its output will remain fixed for a certain period of time in the short run. And suppose the firm is a price taker. Price taker means the firm will not be able to change its price on its own because it's a highly competitive market. And you all know that in the highly competitive market, you cannot set a price which is quite higher than the others. Also, you cannot set a price lower than the others. There is a constraint. We will study market in detail. Then we will understand better what are the characteristics of a perfectly competitive market and all that. Then it will be clearer. But you should practically, if you think, then if it is a market which is highly competitive, any product which you are dealing with which is a highly competitive one in the market, you cannot set a price which is different from the competitive firms. You have to keep more or less same price. So suppose these two things are there in the short run. First is the firm cannot increase its output, and the second thing is there is this firm is a price taker, that is cannot fix the price or change the price on its own. Then its total revenue will also remain fixed because you cannot change the price. It's not that you will increase the price after every month and you can increase your profit. It is not going to happen. So, and you have an installation constraint, capacity constraint. So following these two conditions, your total revenue is also going to remain fixed. Therefore, the only way to maximize profit is to minimize the cost. So if these are the two conditions, then how will you maximize the profit? You will have to minimize the cost, right? That is the only way you can increase your profit figure. Thus, profit maximization and cost minimization are the two sides of the same coin, isn't it? Profit maximization and cost minimization plays on the two flip sides of the same coin. If you increase profit, you cannot do it simply because it is dependent on the cost factor. And cost minimization, if you target, then there will be only profit maximization. So this thing you have to understand first before we move on to isoquant and isocost line. This thing you have to understand first, that in a highly competitive market where where there is capacity constraint for any firm, the total revenue is going to remain fixed for a certain period of time. Then during this period, during this short run period, what is the only way left in the hand of the firms to increase its profit? The only way is to minimize the cost. Moreover, supply depends on the cost of production. The decision to supply an extra unit depends on the marginal cost of producing that unit. Perhaps the most important determinant of the firm's price output decision in any market is its cost of production. Now, on the supply side, if you think, it is dependent completely on the cost of production. Now, on what factor this decision to supply an extra unit will depend? Obviously, it will depend on the marginal cost of producing that unit. Marginal cost, again, when the term marginal is being used, you have to think about a concept of some increased cost for producing one extra unit. So the supply thing, as it depends on the cost of production of that particular product on which you are going to supply it to the market, at the same time, the decision to supply that extra unit also is dependent on the marginal cost of production of that unit. Perhaps the most important determinant of the firm's price output decision in any market is its cost of production. Whatever you want to decide, your profit thing, your revenue, how much revenue, price output relation, what is going to be the price of the product, then what is the exact amount of output you're going to supply, everything is dependent on the cost of the production. So cost is the most important thing. What the point is, in this two paragraph, the point is to mention that cost is perhaps the most important, cost of production is perhaps the most important factor going on in the firm's production theory. Now the firm's cost in its turn depends on two key factors. Now let us come to the cost concept. Cost for the firm. Now this firm's cost of production completely depends on two important factors. What are those factors? The first factor is the technical relation between the inputs and the outputs. That is how outputs vary as inputs vary. Now, what is the relationship between input and output? The cost depends on that, isn't it? That increase in 1 unit of input will result in 5 units, increase in 5 units of the output. So that relationship has a key role to play in determining the firm's cost. And the second thing is factor prices. Factor prices means factor, when you are using the term factor of production, these are nothing but the inputs that you are putting on producing that output. So factor prices will mean what? That is the price of the labor or the wages that you are paying every day to the labor. Then the price of the capital. What is the price of the capital? This is nothing but the interest rate or the rate of interest at which you have taken the capital from any financial institutions. So all these prices, that means what are the prices you're paying for generating the input for the production process, that is also a key determinant for the firm's cost. Now come to long run production function. The long run production function of a firm involving the usage of two factors, say labor and capital, is represented by equal product curve or called the isoquant curve. Now we are gradually moving on to the concept of the isoquant. So from where we started? We started with the fact that in a perfectly competitive market you cannot increase the prices, and if the constraint is such that the capacity cannot be improved, or it cannot be reinstalled, or it cannot be enhanced so that the output increases, if these two things are prevailing, then the total revenue is also going to remain fixed for a short run period, for a short period of time. In this scenario, the only way to maximize the profit is what? It is to minimize the cost. If you minimize the cost, only then you can improve on the amount of profit, isn't it? Next, we came over the fact that also not only the profit maximization but also the supply side depends on the cost of the production. Then we have proved that the most important determinant for the firm's price and output decision making is the cost of the production. Then we gradually came to the concept of the firm's cost. And we tried to define what are the two factors on which the firm's cost is dependent upon. The first factor that we identified is the relationship between the input and the output. That means the production function. How the input should be improved or should be decreased so that the output gets affected. Okay, that is the first thing. And second thing is the factor prices. That is the price of the labor or the wages that you are paying to the labor every day, and or the interest rate that you are paying to the financial institutions for accumulating funds from them. So this thing, two things we have identified to be prime determinant of the firm's cost. Now then we started to talk about the isoquant thing. What is isoquant? The long run production function of a firm involving the usage of two factors, say capital and labor. Now say we are saying that the long run production function, till now we were doing the short run production function, right? Now let us talk about the long run production function. If we talk about the long run production function of a firm involving only two inputs, one is labor and one is capital. These are the prime inputs that we had identified. So say we are trying to talk about the long run production function of a firm that involves only the usage of two inputs. One is capital and one is labor. So if we try to represent this long run production function with the help of this usage of these two factors only, then we can represent that function with the help of equal product curve, also known as isoquant curve. Okay, so what is isoquant curve? The long run production function of a firm involving the usage of two factors such as labor and capital is represented with the help of equal product curve or isoquant curve. This curve is also known as a producer's indifference curve, as isoquant traces out the combinations of any two inputs which yield the same level of output. Now, do you remember the concept of indifference curve? When we were studying consumers' behavior, we had studied indifference curve, combination of two different products that were giving equal level of satisfaction. Do you remember that? I don't know, I cannot see your faces, so I just hope you remember. So So that was the concept of indifference curve in consumer's theory, consumer behavior theory. Now we are talking about production function. So when we talk production function in terms of indifference curve, we say that this is the combination of any two inputs that gives the same level of output. Okay. So this isoquant curve is also known as the producer's indifference curve. This is the producer's indifference curve, not the consumer's indifference curve. All right. When we studied consumer behavior, we studied indifference curve in terms of consumers. When they purchase two things, combination of two things that gives the equal level of satisfaction. But when we talk about producer's indifference curve, also known as isoquant curve, we talk about the tracing of combinations of any two inputs that produces or that helps in producing the same amount of output. All right. These combinations must be the most efficient ones. Now, this combination of two inputs means what? Two inputs are what are the two inputs? One is the labor and one is the capital. So these combinations must be the most efficient ones. That is, any point on an isoquant shows the minimum quantities of the input required to produce a given output. So when you are plotting the combinations on a same indifference curve, these combinations should be the most efficient one in the sense of what? In the sense that any point on this isoquant curve will show the minimum quantities, because you need to find out the minimum quantities of the usage of labor and capital so that you can maximize on the profit, isn't it? That is your main concern. So with the help of this isoquant curve, you have to plot you have to draw the isoquant curve in such a way that these combinations which are falling in the isoquant curve, they are the most efficient ones. And any point on this curve shows the minimum quantities of the labor and capital that is required to produce a given amount of output. Because you cannot change the amount of output, you need to change the amount of input. You have to use the minimum amount of labor and capital so that you can maximize the profit, isn't it? So isoquants are typically drawn as being convex to the origin, just similar to the indifference curve in consumer behavior theory. This isoquant curve will also be convex to the origin because of the assumed substitutability of inputs. So that concept is not a practical thing. Assuming substitution of the inputs is not a good thing to assume in production theory, because labor cannot be substituted with capital and capital cannot be substituted with labor. So, but we for the theory purpose, we will assume substitutability, and that is why the isoquant curve will also look convex to the origin. I'll not move ahead today. We will take up the definitions and explanations of isoquants tomorrow. I'll just show you the curve, how they look like. See, they look similar to the indifference curve, isn't it? And isocost will look similar to the budget line. You should go through the concept of indifference curve and budget line tonight. So that when tomorrow I take up this discussion on isoquant and isocost, you should be able to relate it to the concept of indifference curve and budget line. Understood? In consumer behavior theory, we call them indifference curve and budget line, whereas when we talk about production theory, we name them as what? We name them as what? Tell me. Tell me, what is the new name for indifference curve and budget line that you came across today in production theory? Tell me, who have understood today's discussion? Then I will be able to find out who has understood today's discussion. No one understood. In consumer behavior theory, we have come across the term indifference curve and budget line. Now we will know them as what? In production theory, we will know them as isoquant and isocost line. Yes, very good. Very good, Angela. Okay, now respond. Okay, Abhay, Aditya,
Present, ma'am.
Alsaba,
Present, ma'am.
Aman
Ma'am, to
Goyal,
market present.
Aman Goyal, Aman Sharma, Ananta, Angela, Anish,
Present,
Anisha,
ma'am. Present, ma'am.
Ankit, Anmol, Anmol Lama,
Present, ma'am.
Bhavesh, Vikash, Vishwadeep,
Present, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Charu, Chirag, Deepika. Somebody's microphone is unmuted. Please mute yourself. Abhay Sharma, given you. I have given you present mark. Girish Agarwal, Himani, Jaya,
Present, ma'am.
Kashish,
Present, ma'am.
Meghna,
Yes, ma'am.
Mehul, Parveen,
Present,
Muskan
ma'am.
Agarwal,
Present, ma'am.
Muskan Agarwal,
Ma'am, Muskan Agarwal 21. Okay.
yeah,
Huh.
Neha, Nikhil, Nishita, Nupur, Piyush,
Present, ma'am.
Pragati, Prageshwar, Prashant, Pratham, Preeti, Poonam, Ronak, Ravi, Riyant, Riyalama, Rohan,
Yes, ma'am.
Ronak, Sahil, Shama,
Ma'am.
Srishti,
Yes, ma'am.
Sneha, Saurav, Saurav
Present, ma'am.
Agarwal, Srishti, Suhana,
Yes, ma'am.
Sujit,
Present, ma'am.
Subneet, Swati,
Present,
Swayam,
ma'am.
Present, ma'am.
Tanya, Yash, Yashika, Shreya.
Present, ma'am.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I think you didn't mark my
Who is this?
Imani Agrawal,
Himani?
ma'am. Yes,
No,
ma'am.
I marked it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then see you tomorrow again. Bye bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am.